Welcome to Stingray Tom's Florida and another Florida Amazing 10. A couple of months ago I made a video that told the story of 10 large immigration movements in Florida history. My inspiration was a visit to an exhibition at the Orlando Museum of Art of the photography of Juan David Tena. Recently, the museum was kind enough to invite me to the press event for a new exhibition. This time it's the 11th annual Florida Prize in Contemporary Art. It presents the work of 10 remarkable Florida artists, and I thought that it'd be interesting to share what I heard and what I saw. As I regularly remind myself, my channel is about Florida tourism history, and while what I write about is grounded in my perspective, it's important to look at the subject through different eyes. So I strive to collect and share the voices of others, and the art of these 10 individuals reflects Florida history, culture, and nature in some surprising ways. There's just a couple of quick notes before I begin. The first is that there's a number of random noises in the video, and a couple of the interviews were done in the midst of the noisy premiere. But sometimes I have to collect stories in less than perfect places. The second thing is that on and off I show Leo Castañeda's video art and play its soundtrack. The music was composed by Victor Gamboa. Also understand that this isn't a review of the art in any way. I happen to like it all, but I'm not qualified to speak about it artistically, only historically. So on to the artists. Amazing Florida artist number 1. Amanda Linares. Amanda was born and raised in Cuba and earned an art degree there. Today she lives in Miami, where she got a BFA in graphic design from New World School of the Arts. Her work explores the concepts of identity, displacement, absence, and reconnection, using forms of arts including drawing, photography, and design techniques with which she creates installations. Those engage the public by incorporating reflection, transparency, found objects, and typographical elements.
And specifically this installation is called Yo vengo de todas partes y hacia todas partes voy, which would translate to I come from everywhere and everywhere I shall go.
This work is named for 2 lines of simple verses, a poem by Jose Marti. Marti is a Cuban hero from the 19th century, loved for his role in Cuban independence and his unmatched body of writings. Part of the poem was also used in the Cuban song Guantanamera. While the song was composed in the 1920s, it'd be in 1963 that Pete Seeger reworked the song and it became popular in the U.S. Seeger offered it as a song of peace and urged people to sing it as a symbol of unity between Americans and Cubans. He asked for it to be sung in Spanish to hasten the day the U.S. is some sort of bilingual country.
And it's an extraction of a really long poem of the national poet from Cuba, Jose Marti. It was very iconographic in our country because of the literature work that he did, and also he became a hero in the war. It really resonated with me and my work because it kind of has this concept of we are all integrated and included as a humanity. And the work itself started with this discovery of this facade, of this photograph of this house that exists in Asturias, Spain, that belongs to my great-grandfather's family. So I have Spanish from both sides, mother and father.
Amanda told me that the building is in Asturias, Spain, in a small town called Ordavaga. The Principality of Asturias is located on the northern coast of Spain and coincidentally contains the city of Aviles, the hometown of Pedro Menendez, the conquistador who established St. Augustine in 1565. This installation also includes 3 soils: topsoil, red clay, and sand. The main intention behind using the soils was to create a spectrum of different land colors as a metaphor for territories, geography, layers, and skin.
Because it's a stone house, so it has this kind of like, I guess, layers of stones. And I really like that idea of like, I've been wanting to create a more larger body of work. Since I'm talking about heritage, but I'm also talking of immigration, not only because I came to Miami, because of also the family from Spain that also traveled to Cuba. So it's all this circle that happens where we all have somehow have had immigration in our heritage. In my work, I've been using a lot of the material of concrete, which have become a kind of like one of the main ones and more important ones, because it reminds me of the architecture, the colonial architecture in Cuba, as opposed to drywall in Miami. And it also has like a very heavy, I would say, feeling because it kind of like ties to my past, right? And it's also a material that can be very sturdy and like last during time, but it also can become very fragile the way that you use it, because if you don't put reinforcement inside, it literally just crumbles. So it's even more fragile than ceramics, really. So the first layers always starts with concrete, then I have plaster, which is a material that I use for the first time. Some of them have layers of fabric, and the fabric was donated by family and friends. And some of them finished with glass and also wallpaper.
I asked Amanda about the insects in this work. She spoke about a 2023 solo exhibition where, as she puts it, the insects emerged as a symbol of the exterior world infiltrating the interior, blurring the boundaries between them. They also suggest life's fleeting fragility, appearing almost fossilized, such as in the cement tiles used in this work. Amazing Florida Artist Number 2, Troy Simmons. Troy is originally from Palestine, Texas, and is currently working in Miami. He's a sculptor and multimedia artist working with concrete, fabric, acrylic, construction debris, and other found objects. His art shows his experimentation of color, texture, and structure, and is informed by his background of environmental science and architectural technology. Parts of Troy's art at the show were rescued parts of buildings that had been removed through the questionable process of gentrification.
The work here is a combination of about 3.5 decades of experimentation with materials and ideas and experiences. The works, though I've been an artist or practicing my work for over 3 decades, I have a background in environmental science and architecture. So these works are like an escape from the day-to-day works, basically. So all the experiments, they're things like seeing both in my studies of environmental science that I studied under the microscope, a total different world of like everything that's in there outside of our world we live in. You have this little microbiological world that's in there. Some of the pieces are taking references from there, and some of the pieces are coming from my architectural background, which is archaeology, which is the Egyptian pyramids, which are tombs, which is excavation, which is all those different things. So all the works are really just playing with those ideas of curiosity, both around architecture, biology, and this unknown world that we are living inside of ourselves. So this portion down here is from a building in Miami that was being destroyed. I took that part, built out this whole structure, which is all aluminum, welded aluminum, all the way into the concrete to anchor itself amongst the other concrete portions to build up this whole structure to balance itself on this one little piece, which is the Egyptian pyramid point flipped upside down. And these old buildings have their own history again, just like the materials and the pieces you have inside the space. The material there has its own history. Someone spent their time and their energy to create this building at some point, which produces income for their families and the community. But now as it's dilapidated in an old building, what was it used for? We see it as like, oh, it's a crack house or it's a den, or whatever it is. But the history there is in your own imagination if you really think that someone really put all their hard-earned money into that.
Amazing Florida Artist Number 3, Jiha Moon. Jiha moved from Korea to Tallahassee 2 years ago and is a professor of painting and drawing at Florida State University. She works with ceramics, painting, and fabric to create a number of different forms of art. She incorporates Eastern and Western themes along with traditional and popular styles in her work. If you happen to meet her, ask her about her artistic connection with Keanu Reeves.
I consider my painting cultural landscape, and my ceramic sculptures are hybrid portrait. So kind of having that as a starting point, you can kind of enjoy the work, especially for the painting series. We put together the collaboration between me and my grandmother, who's 98 years old. My sensibility of color came a lot from my grandmother, and she has a sewing machine that she puts together things all the time. And many of my work kind of deal with abstract geometry. That's coming from Korean quilt called bojagi. And it's kind of similar to Mondrian if you look at the way they put the patchwork and geometric setting, but I sort of collaborate with the paper and acrylic medium, painting front and then painting back, also combining paper and fabric at the same time, also thinking about younger generation and older generation, so I'm kind of bridging that. Often I think about like purgatory, and is there a place like, purgatory, not heaven, not hell, not in a religious way, but for me, purgatory is our presence.
Purgatory is an intermediate state after death in Christianity. It's thought that souls are sent there to purge or cleanse them of the accumulated minor sins before heading to paradise.
So my work is much more focusing on the present moment, which I like to celebrate because, I belong here, and I often think about if that such a place exists, like where artists need to be. It's a purgatorial setting, the present time, and we find a lot of interesting things metaphorically and philosophically, and also based on our life. And for me, it's a rich, medium for me. I guess around this time I need to talk about banana peel, because banana peel is one of my iconographies. I have a dictionary of long, imagery as iconography. And banana peel, I start out using that image as representation of Asian American, because people call Asian yellow and banana, and I promised I studied this before I moved to Florida. And then I saw Andy Warhol's Velvet Underground album cover, one of the pop artists in 60s in America, and I was super excited about it. And what if I use banana peel as a symbol of Asian American representation in the United States? And it really excited me. People, I guess also banana represent in a way that second generation of Asian American who don't speak their parents' language.
As for Warhol's banana, a phrase I never thought I'd utter, it was on the Velvet Underground self-titled album. While the record inside is one of the most influential of all time, there are many interpretations about what its cover meant. Warhol never bothered to explain it, though the fact that it was initially issued with the banana being a peelable sticker that revealed a flesh-colored banana beneath might suggest at least one meaning.
I always had my fantasy about Florida, but actually I moved down to Florida. I got to experience how beautiful it is nature-wise. I live in Tallahassee, Florida, teach at FSU. So our town is a little canopy, and there's a lot of beautiful live oak trees and Spanish moss all around. And every day I get up and look at the nature, I feel so blessed. But at the same time, now we're dealing with the hurricane and this natural disasters all over the place. But Florida, living in Florida, you cannot avoid that. So something you inherited that's beautifully can be also dangerous, and you so kind of see this both side of it. So my beautiful sceneries, people's resilience, how prepared they are. For students at FSU and elsewhere, people who really want to pursue art, I want them to kind of listen to themselves, and your storytelling always starts with you. You're very authentic. Your storytelling is nobody ever had experienced. You are very precious, and you're the reason why actually I came down to Florida. So don't look at so much of other things influence. I mean, you do need to study, but make sure you listen to yourself first. And then that's actually my one of the most important things that I promised to myself to inspire younger generation. Please listen to yourself first, and then we're all here as an older generation. We're here to support you guys. So that's my 2 cents.
Amazing Florida artist number 4, Eddie Arroyo. Eddie lives in the Little Haiti district of Miami and earned a BFA in painting from Florida International University. Through his art, Arroyo investigates grassroots movements and communities undergoing change, reflecting on themes of assimilation, power, and identity. This series is a good example of Eddie's art in that the subject is located in his changing neighborhood and touches on issues connected with class, race, government, and history.
Recently there was a heritage marker, historic marker that came up, and then it was knocked down, but it happened during Art Week in Miami. So Miami Art Basel is huge, more like it's an international event, but locally the whole city gets taken over by art.
Arthur McDuffie was a black insurance salesman and United States Marine Corps Lance Corporal. McDuffie was beaten to death by 4 police officers after a traffic stop. After the officers were tried and acquitted on charges including manslaughter and evidence tampering, a riot broke out in the black neighborhoods of Overtown and Liberty City.
Specifically, the plaque came down, it was knocked over December 2nd. But on December 3rd, people started to interact with it. So someone wrapped over some caution tape around it. December 8th, it just was this bare pillar. The following year, which is this year, on February 7th, the plaque went back up. So I was like, oh, this is wonderful. So I decided to take a picture documenting and archiving the process, and then I decided to do drawings, and that basically within the neighborhood I'm living in, which I consider Little Haiti, it's going through a lot of change, and there's a lot of investment happening there right now. And so having been living there for over 10 years, I get to see the progress of that happening. The reason Arthur McDuffie was a focal point is because of how public executions are, it's like the evolution of public executions, and then the public responded to it with a riot that happened in the 1980s. And that specific riot did affect the history of the city. The repercussions of that riot, because there's a lot of change happening at the time. Cubans came in to the city, and they assimilated into Miami very well and transformed a lot of the city. And to this day, a lot of the Cubans are in Miami right now. Personally, I feel there's like a shelf life with a marker like this. I don't know if it's going to stick around, so I thought it was good to take this moment to really reflect on that right now.
Amazing Florida artist number 5, Leo Castañeda. Leo is from Colombia and is a multimedia artist and a video game designer. His artwork primarily takes the form of episodic games and immersive installations that meld atmospheric paintings, video, and mixed reality. Leo's creations work within Latin American surrealism. His work at the museum is Camouflux Mangrove Village 360 and is a prologue environment to a video game he's been working on for a number of years. It includes both pre-Columbian sculpture elements as well as landscapes found throughout coastal Florida and the Caribbean. Mangroves are one of the most important trees in Florida and the Caribbean. They are one of the few salt-tolerant trees and are able to thrive in the ocean as well as in fresh water. Their exposed roots provide homes for any number of different animals.
It's an intersection of fine art and gaming, so using the world building practices of concept art from video games and movies where you build out characters and worlds, but fusing them with principles of fine art, science, biology, and with the intention of a future mythology that is more sustainable. And basically this is the prologue environment. It's called the Camouflux Mangrove Village. So the Camouflux are these beings of that world that could be interpreted as future humans, future robots, like all the robots that are getting built nowadays, sea slugs that evolved to be bipedal, aliens, like you don't fully know that they're these beings, but they live in this very chaotic environment that's going through a lot of cataclysmic change, but they've also created this sustainable society. So they use these braided mangroves that work as hydroelectric plants to get energy from the water, and then they're able to distribute them almost like these energetic torches. So this is the fly-through of that world. These beings are basically gathering energy to this teleporter that you'll see that's influenced by a pre-Columbian sculpture to then launch themselves into the explosion to try to understand it. So it's almost like they're doing these rituals to face the biggest change. And then to build on the landscape, when I started the series, I was highly influenced by romantic landscape painting.
Amazing Florida artist number 6, Kelly Joy Ladd. Kelly is a rarity, not only a Florida native, but so's her dad. She has a BA in Liberal Studies from the University of Central Florida and has studied astronomy, physics, creative writing, Eastern philosophy, and meditation. Her work responds to themes of cosmic and creative mysteries, exploring inner and outer space, spirituality, and the interconnectedness of all things, and our roles and purpose in the universe. Working in the medium of paper, she creates large works, as you can see here.
My work is about connection to self and connection to others and connection to the universe as a whole. And I infused energies, like sacred energies, like love and joy and wonder into each of the pieces. Each of these pieces is a very personal, it's a personal story for me. Like, for example, this piece, it's about 7 generations of my family, and it's our stories. Went and collected soil from all these different places where my family loved and grown up and went to work and school. And I believe that the earth holds a memory. And so I wanted to collect all those memories and put it in a piece, because basically this is my story. This is where my story comes from. And so this work is very special to me. I have places where my grandparents are buried, and places where my son was born, the hospital where my son was born. So I started just working over the years and really like started playing with paper and texture, and then about 5 years ago I had my own health issue. I had a pretty bad head injury, and which greatly affected my vision, and so this whole process of rehabilitating my vision, I incorporated into my work as well. All I could do all day was just to write into journals. So to rehabilitate myself, I just made myself look at a journal, and that was the only thing I could focus on for a good year or two. And so what I did was, on the winter solstice of this year, I burned those journals, and I spread the ashes onto this paper. It was just a way to heal and to rebirth myself, and just to honor what I've learned in the past, and all the lessons I learned through this whole healing journey. And so that's what this particular piece is about. I grew up in Lake Mary. I was born in Tallahassee, and then we moved around the country until I was 10, and then we moved here when I was 10 into Orlando. And this piece particularly, it's 7 generations of Floridians, is what this piece gathers the energy for. So I went around to different locations all around the state, of places where my family lived and loved and went to school and worked, and so this piece is very personal. It tells my life story, and I feel that the dirt holds the memory of what happened there, and so it was very significant to me just to capture the energy of all that space and basically my story, and so that's what this work is about. Some other pieces of my work is I've gathered water. So Wekiva Springs is a very sacred space for me, and so what I did was, anytime I needed water for any of my pieces, I collected gallons of spring water from the spring itself, and I used that water, and I also collected water from the hurricanes this past year, from Milton and Helene, and I used that water in my work. So that piece over there, it's constructed with the hurricane and the spring water, because I wanted destruction and I also wanted peacefulness. So that's about divinity, so I like the combination of the two.
Due to her husband's chemical sensitivities, she uses a natural glue in her work, which, happily, is also better for the environment.
Oh, definitely, because I don't want the chemicals on me, and I don't want it into the planet, and so of course, like, having less chemicals on the surface is better. So yeah.
Amazing Florida artist number 7, Nathalie Alfonso. Nathalie was born in Columbia and earned a BFA at Florida International University and an MFA from Southern Methodist University in Texas. Like most of the others, she uses many different art mediums to explore the body, memory, landscape, and the dichotomy of visibility and invisibility. Nathalie's work emphasizes action and the trace of motion, and it can be seen as a continuation of influential artists such as Lee Krasner, who created large works with a rhythmic nature without a central focal point. Krasner featured nature in abstracted forms, and her work emphasized the flat nature of the canvas. Her 1959 work, 2 Broadway Murals, illustrates her abstract expressionist painting style. Nathalie's contribution to this exhibition covers an entire wall of the museum and is done in pastels. Part of the inspiration was her time biking through the Everglades, which is expressed in this abstract landscape. It's the only piece in the show that was fully created on site, taking 3 weeks to produce. It'll be erased at the end of the show.
2 or 3 years into my studies, I started to think about how could I connect the idea of physical labor, this idea of like cleaning houses, for example, into drawing. So my works became ephemeral, large scale. This was very informed by the rhythm of cleaning, the method, like kind of like the methodology of getting into a house, starting in a place and ending to a certain place, kind of like making time to, grow shorter. So while I was cleaning houses, I became very aware of the motions of cleaning, like mopping, sweeping, cleaning the toilet, or doing all these gestures. And these gestures are actually applied. You'll see my fingers kind of going into the drawing. It's meant to be erased, destroyed, or painted over after the exhibition is over. Up to now, this is the largest drawing that I've done in the series of drawings that I've been working on. Here, this is a body of work that I developed a few years ago, thinking about the type of structures that get to be built, but we don't know how they get built, who builds them, or we just kind of see the perfect wall in front of the studs. So I wanted to involve the studs in this drawing as a kind of like a reminder of those structures that are hidden, that sometimes we don't have access to either transform, but that we kind of actually have to adapt or create our own structures in order to survive. I started thinking about the systems like the insects or the wildflowers, those flowers that nobody wants in their backyard, like the weeds in a way. But then I realized that the systems sustain our environment, and they're so important for these Everglades who provide most of the water, clean water for all of us in South Florida. And to me, that became direct metaphor of workers, people who clean, people who do construction work, that basically we need them. They're so important in our society, but we never want to see them. This work is the final work, but this has layers. So if we get to see the process of every day, even the way we started applying the pastels the first week don't look nothing like the way it is right now, because we have to apply so the pastels are these little chalks, colorful chalks, right? I blend them in water so they become more like I can roll them. But as I roll them, I need to start integrating them, and then with my body, we really needed to kind of blend all these tones together. So that's the physical part of it. It's a process, yeah. People always wanted to ask me why I don't show the process. And the reason why I don't show the process is because we don't see the people cleaning the buildings, right? It's kind of like we don't see the people building. So it's the same idea. It's like we just want to see the end result, but we don't acknowledge what happens behind the scenes in a way.
Amazing Florida artist number 8, Lisu Vega. Lisu was born in Miami but grew up in Venezuela. She moved back to Miami and lives there now. She is skilled in engraving, photography, sculpture, installation, and fashion, and used her fiber art techniques for this exhibition. Her work explores ideas of sustainability, migration, memory, and identity.
So it is many different processes behind that. Like the main material when I'm working right now is like the repurposed rope, and I create, this is like the chair we used to sit, in her house every afternoon, and that's why she do the storytelling with me, and I try to recreate that moment. Create like a throne. I also, part of the process was healing, and I try to create, a poem to connect all the 3 installations in one. Is another one, in the backside. And this one is getting very emotional for me because of that time. Unfortunately, I cannot travel to Venezuela. But I hired a photographer, and I just told her, very specific capture some places, from the house. After she passed away, nobody lived in the house. So the house, it looks, the mango tree where she planted, which one is the chair is connected with the mango tree, is right now hugging her house. So I connect a fragment for the photography in every single angle of the house, and this is really sustainability project because I use the remains of rope, I shredded and one at the same time, I connect and I made like a layers. After that, I transfer by sublimation, and it's like many different photos show the fragment from that house. So the backside is also really emotional for me because it's also like the backyard from the house, and it's like the mirror with the mango tree. It's give you, like the vibe how you connected, like to my hometown also. And then in the last part of the installation, I have like 4 large tapestry, which when I connect, it's called like imaginary landscape. So pretty much like I trace photos from the present, from a couple months ago and the past like 20 years ago, and I make a new landscaping. Which one is something, like I have in mind when I was little. My grandmother, she was a seamstress. And all the connections what I have right now, all my tools, like it's connecting from her. And I just want to celebrate, her life, like right now. And that's why it's getting, like so personal and emotional.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Amazing Florida artist number 9, Cornelius Tulloch. Cornelius lives in Miami and is an architect as well as an artist. He employs painting, photography, and woodworking in his creations that are designed to explore the importance of cultural identity within built environments and how space shapes culture, which in turn cultivates landscapes. He draws inspiration from Florida as well as his Jamaican and African heritages.
And really for this kind of presentation, I was thinking a lot about the history of South Florida, particularly just Florida in general and its connections to the Caribbean, and really wanting to talk to the idea that both craft and culture are constantly in movement and in conversation, and this dance between the landscapes of both South Florida and the Caribbean, and really wanting to situate you guys, immerse you into the Florida Everglades, and also more in particular craft-wise through the shotgun house. So reimagining this kind of vernacular architectural form that's prolific in the South and in the Caribbean.
The shotgun house is one of the most important vernacular architectural styles in Florida, designed to keep the rooms as cool as possible during the hot and humid summers. The style is also common in parts of the Caribbean and might have been imported to Florida from there. The homes are distinguished by a row of rooms lined up from front to back on a hallway that runs along the side of the house. The breezes that pass through the hall, as well as larger rooms with higher ceilings, help in the cooling.
And talk about these connections where I'm channeling stories of the Saltwater Railroad, which essentially was the movement of enslaved people through Florida into Biscayne Bay and back to the Bahamas. So this kind of story of return, but also the stories of immigrants coming into the US, this story of people finding home, the Seminole Maroons creating their own communities out in the landscape, and really thinking about how not only does the natural landscape create a sense of belonging and home, but how does the built environment? And what happens when new identities occupy these spaces? Really thinking about my own family's history, my mother's family's from Georgia, my father's family's from Jamaica, and kind of I'm this culmination of what Miami is, this mixture of people and culture and history, and really showcasing a space that kind of does that same dance and movement through it, allowing the viewer, like she said, if you move in through this way, you kind of see the sight line and vantage points of how I'm framing each piece as you walk through the gallery space, then kind of leading you to this main piece, Driftwood, and think of Driftwood as this idea of these pieces that end up somewhere or may take root in another place. Also this idea that these communities, or this kind of living in the hyphen of being Caribbean American, what does that mean? What does that mean to kind of create home in a new place? This sense of belonging to the landscapes of these spaces, where although I might not have originally grew up out in the Everglades all the time, like now through a residency called Arroyo, which is Artist in Residence at Everglades, I got to spend a month out there and find all these histories that connected me, not only to this space, but even bringing me up here to Central Florida, where I was looking at the Florida Highwaymen and their paintings and how they encapsulated nature, and thinking like, how do I kind of take this interpretation of landscape and history and think about how am I going to encapsulate these stories in my own work?
The Florida Highwaymen was a group of 25 black male artists and 1 black female artist located in and around Fort Pierce who made tens of thousands of paintings between the 1950s and 1980s. While just loosely connected as a group, their style was a type of folk art concentrating on Florida landscapes. Often choosing to use non-standard colors, they sought to make their paintings stand out and be more sellable. As for selling, they did so out of their cars or by going door to door in Southeast Florida. Their art constitutes a body of work that's unique in the entire United States.
Different ways. This installation, you can also sit on it, engage with it, create a space almost as a porch. So the idea is that this porch passages is this idea that the porch is a space to sit, to linger, to think about memory, history, and to create new ones. So kind of also imagining what is the future of these communities and really kind of making this moment where you can really sit in the gallery and have this space to be. And so looking forward to also future activating this installation with storytelling sessions with musicians and performers throughout the summer. And so kind of I'm almost inviting you into this home, which is a part of my home, because the people depicted in the work are family members and close friends and people who have allowed me to share their stories throughout it and then working with Black Miami-Dade. For me in the beginning, it was interesting because I was particularly looking at Miami's history and seeing which things could I draw upon. And the Shotgun House was like instant, because in Coconut Grove there are a lot of them, and that was a space where a lot of Bahamians, when they came to Miami, they created that neighborhood. And essentially within there was so many shotgun houses that are still now even preserved as a part of that history. So I was like, how do I kind of dive deeper, seeing kind of this like deeper history? And I feel like we don't often ask why or more details in it. And so starting to see that like also the forms and shapes adjusted and how the porches of them were with the woodwork adjusted based on these kind of smaller intersectional things about identity or place, and everyone kind of adding their own characteristics to the Shotgun House. So I thought that that was like really interesting to start kind of diving in. And I think oftentimes because this landscape adjusts so much, fluctuates with water, season, hurricanes, that we don't realize how much deep history has passed through here, how much of that history may have been wiped away with a storm. And so I started thinking of like, well, how do we actually hold on to this history? How do we actually begin to just, beyond oral storytelling, make sure that these things kind of last to future generations? And so that's where the kind of idea of like, oh, what if the actual architecture, and we talk about the memory of how architecture is like almost a monument, but I was like, how can I kind of play with this idea of the architecture and the materials holding the history? And that's when I started working with the transfers and stuff onto the wood pieces and really adding my own history to these things. And so actually all the wood that's used in these collages are all recycled. It really was my residency at Arroyo, which is Artist in Residence in the Everglades, which I'm now doing artistic direction for. That it showed me how much history there is in Florida, how much history goes unwritten, is just told to you by your grandmother or your cousins or something. And then also it showed me so much more about this landscape, and that like there's more than what the eye sees here. And so it kind of really made me start uncovering a lot of these different stories and thinking about how they relate both to the Shotgun House but also to just the natural environment. As an artist who was born and raised here, like seeing this kind of connection also beyond just the immediate landscape and these connections to the Caribbean and this movement of people, like learned about the Florida Highwaymen and all these other histories. And so it just kept adding to this space where I was like, wow, like how haven't I learned about these things in school? And as an artist, how does it make me kind of see the importance of keeping these stories alive and telling these stories, and also looking at like who's telling them and how are we kind of keeping them? And so in this was kind of a tribute to all this Florida history in a way, but really kind of shifted my practice to start thinking of like, how can I be of service to the community as well to help and keep these stories alive and help kind of pass them on. I think I resonate with that, even in my own experience growing up and stuff, where I'm like, Florida has so much atmosphere and moodiness to the day, the time, the weather's constantly changing and has this kind of almost emotion quality to it. And so I think within my work, I try and capture that too, where I'm like, oh, this landscape has these emotions and these things where it changes and alters based on season and weather. And so I really do lean into the more moody tones.
Amazing Florida artist number 10, Kandy G. Lopez. Kandy was born in New Jersey and moved to Florida when young. She earned a BFA and BS from the University of South Florida, as well as an MFA from Florida Atlantic University. Kandy is currently a professor at Nova Southeastern University. As a multimedia Afro-Caribbean American portrait artist, Lopez explores identity through marginalized individuals who are representative of her community. Her work for this show is comprised of yarn and paint and includes a number of cowrie shells.
I'm really working and trying to develop the technique for the past 4 years when I got my first residency. I was born in Jersey and I grew up in Miami, so most of the people that are depicted here are from there, or at least live in like cityscapes. So I'm really interested in the idea of representing my culture, my people, the stories behind us, the armor that we wear in spaces where we need to wear it. And a lot of the times that comes with clothing, body language, gesture, little trinkets and details is something that I really enjoy. So you'll see that there's cowrie shells in some of my pieces.
Cowrie shells are extremely significant in a number of traditional African cultures. They were used for centuries as currency by Africans. In fact, the species name Monetaria moneta even means money in Latin. The shells are also used in divination by the Yoruba people of West Africa, and in Sierra Leone's Mende culture, they are viewed as symbols of womanhood, fertility, birth, and wealth.
So there's a history of the passage of stories and also time when we're talking about the transatlantic slave passage. So there's a connection there. You will also notice that these frames look different from your normal frames. So I learned how to mold make and how to create a specific frame so that I can put the cowrie shells inside instead of having it fabricated. So usually when I have a person and I know that I want to make a piece, I end up meeting them in the place that they feel the most comfortable in. It could be their home, it could be a studio space, it could be in Starbucks, like wherever they feel the most comfortable. I tell them to wear their swaggiest outfit, whatever that means. Sometimes they come with multiple outfits, which is really hard for me to choose which one to make, so sometimes there's multiple. Once I have an image, or once I meet them, I'm usually on the floor because I want the perspective to be that you're looking up at them and they're looking down at you. I like the idea of how it meshes with our history. I think a lot about religion. There's a lot of gold backing that happens within the work. I also think about hierarchy, like who is being depicted, who's the biggest in the space. And once I have an image, then I measure out my hook rug mesh, which is what the backing is. So it's really supposed to be a rug. It was intended, the first one that I made was supposed to be a rug of an African-American male. And you were supposed to walk on him. So it was a political and social statement. And eventually when I started adding color, they became, super powerful. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. So usually I start with the backing and then I give myself 5 to 10 minutes to draw a gesture with an expo marker. I like the challenge of trying to get it right the first time. I also like the challenge of making mistakes, cutting it out, trying it again.
So there you have it, 10 of Florida's artists creating art that speaks to Florida's history, culture, and nature. And of course, I just skimmed the surface of each of them. If you're watching this video between June and August of 2025, I encourage you to head to the Orlando Museum of Art to see the exhibition. There's a link to the exhibition page in the description along with the Instagram links of each of the artists. Thank you for watching another of my videos. I hope you enjoyed it. If you learned something, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more on Florida's tourism history. And please check out my Patreon page. I really could use the support. Stingray Tom's Florida, traveling through time around the Sunshine State.